This segment brought to you by Sure Crop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
A few of the fundamentals on Rockey Farms that are really strong for us is plant diversity plays a really strong role. And it starts with plant diversity, but it doesn't end there, because you need good plant diversity in order to support diversity in the soil and above ground. Even if you're talking about insect populations, it's impossible to have that in these monocultures. So for Rockey Farms, getting away from monocultures has been a really key component. In the potato crops, we use companion crops. Use flowering strips within those. I'm rotating with the diverse cover crop, which we have cattle grazing on top of. So we have we keep hearing about the 5 fundamentals of soil health here, and we pretty well have those covered. The one we're probably the weakest on is the soil being covered at all times, and a lot of that is because of the low residue crop of potatoes. So playing in a little different realm than a lot of the guys that are speaking here, but all those other fundamentals we cover very well and strongly, and we benefit from them all.
I think it's important for people to know they can do this. They can make these changes. It doesn't need to all be at once. It can be one step at a time, but regardless of what you're growing, what you're farming, what your system is, you always have the opportunity to make a choice to do it differently, and all of these things are possible.
One thing that I think is real interesting as a person that gets to speak and listen at one of these conferences is just, for example, Gabe Brown was speaking right before me. We are in completely different environments, growing completely different crops, but we were both emphasizing the same fundamentals. It's just over and over again. And you go and listen to these other guys talk, and we're always covering the same core fundamentals. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. And it's really up to the individual farmer to figure out how to take those fundamentals and apply them on their own operations. We can't sit there and tell each individual what they need to be specifically doing, but focus on the fundamentals, focus on things like carbon cycling and soil structure, figure out how to maximize those on your farm, and you're gonna see positive results.
Well, we look at how we farm as more of a cycle, as more of a loop. There's give and takes within that cycle, but it's not just straightforward. It does, what goes around comes around, I guess, in your farming system.
I think one thing that's really beneficial to us is being a certified potato seed producer. For us, we don't buy the seed, plant it, grow that crop out that year. We're producing all the way back to tissue culture, growing mini tubers in a greenhouse, growing that crop out for 3 or 4 years before we can sell that seed. So for us, we've always had to look at the big picture in multiple years stacked on top of each other. So for us to look at the soil health on a longer term scale wasn't that hard for us, whereas I think where a lot of farmers struggle is they're so used to farming 1 year at a time. And for us, we need to look at the big picture and how 1 year will impact us 5 years from now.
And that also comes into one of the most important resources in farming, which is water. We live in a drought-stricken area, and a lot of these practices came about because of water conservation, not so much of the soil health aspect in the beginning.
Yeah, between water conservation, and I mentioned in my presentation too, just we wanted to eliminate our personal exposure to a lot of these chemicals. It wasn't even, the first step wasn't about soil health or crop health, it was our health. We really looked at that first, and it's like, what do we need to do to protect ourselves? And that's what really opened our eyes to looking at how we can improve this other system completely.
And bringing us back into that relationship with the farm ecosystem. Sometimes I think the farmers out here, the farm is happening here, and we're back in this circle where everything that happens with the soil, with the crop, affects us too.
Well, and that's why I do like that definition of biotic farmer, because that includes the farmer.
Yeah.
So when you look at certified organic, that is about the things you are not doing. It's not about the positive things you're doing, and it really doesn't take the health of the consumer and the farmer into consideration.
Yeah, we have a healthy farm, not just healthy soil.